Good morning, folks. Network device, and we've got only about a half an hour to do that, so I'm going to go through some things fairly quick. The basics of what we're looking for here is here's our agenda. We're just going to do a bit of introduction. We're going to do a bit of investigation. We're going to look at a device that we're going to monitor. We're going to go off to the Ops Manager console, and we're going to actually discover that device in Ops Manager. Then we're using MP Studio. We're going to create a management pack and a class for this unique device. We're going to create the discovery. We're going to create a monitor. We're going to push all this up to Ops Manager, and we'll see an alert generated. Now, because Ops Manager takes several minutes to do discoveries and things like that when we push stuff up, I've actually pre-done all this. So I'm going to walk through the steps that are exactly what I did in the past, but it's already been done. So a lot of cases, I'll either show you the properties of something that's already been done, or I'll walk the wizard up to the point where I'd create and then I'll cancel out because it's already been completed. And I'm afraid that's just for time today, so we'll move on from that. Network devices. Network devices are almost all managed by SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol. This is a standardized protocol. It's common. It's been around for years. It's a very established, well-defined protocol. Like all of these things, there's some differences between various implementations, but on the whole, it's a pretty solid thing. Now, the capabilities of a device are defined by what they call management information base files, or MIB files. These are text files that form a hierarchical description of the capabilities of a device. And I'm not going to show one of those in general, but the point is that the MIB files define everything there is to know about SNMP, and there will be specific MIB files for unique devices. We'll get to that in a while. The individual data points on an SNMP device are defined by OAVs. Now, an OAV is basically just a series of numbers, like 1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. It creates a hierarchy, and we'll demonstrate that in a couple of minutes. And the OAVs can be used to identify devices, their capabilities, values of things. We'll take a look at that shortly. If you are trying to create a management pack for a device, it's very important to get the MIB. The vendors have varying ways of getting these to you. Some of them it's just available on the public website. Others you have to register on their website and identify your device and all the rest of this stuff. They generally try to make it rather hard, but there's some public repositories where a lot of these MIBs show up, and that's perhaps the easiest way to get there. There's a couple of free tools. I'm going to be demonstrating one of these, the OAView SNMP MIB browser. This is what we're going to use to do our experimentation. OAView also has an online MIB database where you can download MIBs, and in fact, that's where I got the particular MIBs I'm using. iReasoning also has a MIB browser that is free as well, so there's some good tools there. So here's what we want to do today. We want to discover this sonic wall router that we have in the office. We'll be doing that in Ops Manager console, and then we're going to create a new class for this device. And this is part of the service model that Brian was describing so wonderfully this morning. We create a unique class, a new class for each type of device, simply so we can target things properly. We don't want to apply a monitor to all nodes, which is the root class for SNMP devices. We only want to create a monitor for this particular device, so we want to create a new class for it. Then we'll create the discovery so that we actually find this class we just defined. And then we're going to create a monitor. And in this particular case, we're going to look at the memory usage of this device, and we're going to raise an alert if it's over a particular threshold. So let's get on to our demonstration. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring up the OAView product. Now, I wanted to give you a quick rundown on this, but basically, as you can see here in this MIB tree section, everything's described in a tree structure. For instance, we're looking at this system node here. And system node is under ISO ISO org DoD Internet Management MIB2 system. That's a lot of depths, but it's where most of the good stuff comes from. It's under this MIB2 folder. And the numbers in brackets are what are used to build this OID. So for instance, if we look over here in this live grid, we can look at the system description, and I'm going to unhighlight that because unfortunately it highlights and makes the contrast very poor, but it's the one above the one that's highlighted. The system description basically is just the name of the system. And if we look at that first column, we can see the OID is 136.12.11.0. Actually, I think I missed a 1 in there. And that's what happens when you go down this tree. ISO, org, DoD. Now that's going to be slow. Internet Management MIB2 system. As we walk down that path, those numbers identify that OID. One of the most important things we want to look at here is this sys object ID. I'm going to click that so you can simply see the description down here in this MIB info section, down in the lower right-hand side. So the syntax tells us that this is an object identifier, it's read-only, it's up to date, and the description describes what it is. And basically, for every device, there's a unique OID that identifies the device, or I think in general, it's a device family. For instance, all of the SonicWall TZ series may return the same OID. I don't know that for a fact, but they could have a separate unique identifier if the SNMP description would differ between the devices. So in particular, we're going to look at this. For this OID, again, I'm going to move the highlight here so you can see it. 136.141. 8741 is the enterprise ID for SonicWall. And this just describes the particular device. Now I'm going to come down a little further in the tree. There's another section down here called Private Enterprises, and then we have SonicWall down here. And you'll notice the number here in brackets, the 08741 that we saw above. So SonicWall has this registered number, and they can create any MIBs they want to describe their devices underneath this. And if you look at the OIDs over in the live grid again, you'll see there's 8 or 9 of them here. In particular, we're looking at this fourth one down, a Sonic Current RAM Util. Now, I'm just going to leave this up for a second. The description is instantaneous RAM utilization in percentage. It's a gauge which basically returns an integer. The current value is 44% of the CPU is used. And it has this OID value, and I'm going to move the highlight off so that you can read it a little clearer. 136.141.8741, which is the SonicWall, and then 1314. And so that describes that particular value. And we're going to be using those numbers in a little while, but I want to just give you a sense of what this is and where they are and how it's structured. Most MIB browsers allow you to load MIBs. I've already done that, and I'm not going to go through that. I won't even demonstrate what a MIB file looks like. Suffice to say, you need them. They really make life important for you. So I'm not sure where my timing is, but we'll just move on here. I want to come over here to my management group, and I'm going to go to the administration tab. When we need to create a management discovery of a discovery of a device, there's two things we have to do at first. We have to set up a run as profile here, and so under accounts we can create a run as profile, and I'm going to walk through this. You'll actually notice I already have it defined, but I'll just show you what we would have done here. So we bring up the wizard. There's nothing to do on the first page. We're going to click that. The run as account type for an SNMP device is community string, and there's not much to that. It's just a name that's used. I'm just going to copy and paste some values over here. So I'm putting in a display name for it. We can put in a description, and I can just copy and paste that so it's quick. The community string is just the credentials that are used to talk to an SNMP device. Now this is, SNMP actually has sort of 3 levels. This is the authentication that's used for level 1 and level 2. There's also a version 3 which has a much stronger authentication. I'd recommend you use that if possible. I think most modern devices would support version 3. I'm just using version 2 here because it's quick and easy. The community string is literally just a password. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but anybody who's used SNMP before and realizes I just typed 6 characters can probably guess what it is. The distribution of these credentials is the choice we have here. For the time being, I've just set it to less secure because I want to make it easy. This is a lab environment. I'm not too worried about the security right now. However, in practice, you'd probably want to use the more secure, and then you select which computers the credentials are distributed to. I didn't want to do that. At this point, I would hit create, but like I said, I've already done that. So I'll cancel out of the wizard, and I will just show you the properties of the existing community string here, which, as you can see, the run as type is community string. The values are pretty much the same as we've already seen. That's actually a 6-character password, but they don't show the length there, so that's a good idea. And the distribution is the less secure. I guess if it was more secure, you'd specify the computers here. Once that's done, we now have the credentials we need to use to talk to the device. The next thing to do is actually find the device on the network and start talking to it. So under device management, network management here, there's a section called discovery rules. And so for each device, we have to create a rule that will discover it. Again, I've already created it, but I will go through and I'll show you what we would have done here before I cancel out. In fact, I'm just going to show you the properties. I remember why. Due to restrictions in Ops Manager, each server can only have one of these rules. I've already got it, so I can't actually walk through the whole wizard because it won't allow me to specify the same Ops Manager server again. But the properties is almost identical. So let me just go through and show that. Basically, same sort of thing. You give the discovery rule a name. In our case, we're looking for the sonic wall. We've got a description for it. Here's the available servers I was talking about, and unfortunately, I only have the one in this lab environment, so that's already selected. And then we have a resource pool. I've just used the all network devices discovery pool. You could create a new one. I'm not going to get into any of that. Go on to the next thing, explicit discovery and recursive discovery. I'm just looking for a single device here, but recursive directory actually allows you to connect to the device, and from the built-in knowledge that Ops Manager has, it can try and find other devices, and so it'll traverse the tree of all your devices and try to find all of them. I'm just going for the simplest case for this example, so we're going on there. Default accounts. So in this case, this list comes up with the account name. These are the available community strings. And the only thing I had to do with this was make sure it was checked. By default, it wasn't, because presumably it could have been more than one, and you want to select the correct one. So that's that. Now, devices. Here's where you actually give it the information to find the device. In particular, I think I can walk through this without any trouble. We type in the IP address here. Again, I'm just going to cut and paste for accuracy. Access mode, in this case, I'm only going to be using SNMP. ICOMP is pings. SNMP version V1 or V2. There is, of course, a V3 choice here, but I've only set up for V1. We're going to use the default account that was specified in the previous thing. I presume it's complaining because it's already in the device list, so that's fine. And, of course, here it is. The discovery schedule is how often and when to run it. I've just used the manual discovery because, again, this is a lab environment. I wanted to get it to go quickly. We go through it and give a summary, and if this was the wizard creating a new one, when I saved, it would go out and do the discovery immediately. Again, I'm going to cancel because we've already done that. There is a run action up here, but as I mentioned, it can take several minutes to find this, so we just wanted to be sure that it was already done for you, so it's done. If we look here after it discovers it, it will show up in this list of network devices. And so there's our device, and we can actually look at the properties of that device, and we can see a bunch of the information that it got. I'm not sure there's anything terribly interesting here. Oh, there's our system object ID. We were pointing out the object ID in the previous demo. Well, there's the object ID. So if we didn't already have it, we could use that. So that's our device, and SCOM now knows about it. The next step is actually to get to the point where we can do something with it. So for that, I actually have to quit here and come over here to MP Studio. And I'm just creating this in MP Studio because I think it's a good place to do it. One of the things I want to just demonstrate is that within MP Studio, we have this store database which has version control. It's a great place to work, keep multiple versions. You can actually deploy directly to it. We'll see some of those things shortly. So I want to create a new management pack. I'm going to create it under my Sargent folder here. Say create new management pack. We give a little introduction here. We give it a name, and I'm going to call it early demo. Bad name, but I already have a demo or an MP defined called MP University, which we'll see later. We move on to this. I'm going to save that in the store. Here is where we have the references that the management pack will use. Now, for using SNMP devices, there's 3 additional references we probably want to put in here. So I'm just going to bring up this list. I'm going to come down here to system.snmp library. I'm going to select the latest version. As you can see, I have many versions in my library, but we're only really interested in the latest one here. I'm also going to add System Network Management Library. Network Management Library, again, latest version, and System Network Management Monitoring. These MPs, when they're included, of course, have all the definitions and module types that we'll be using. I'm just going to create an empty management pack. MP Author and MP Studio don't have any specific support for SNMP in them right now. So we're going to use the XML editing, so we would just want to start off with an empty management pack. And there it is. It's being created and added to the store. And it should show up in the tree over here in a second. There's our early demo, and we have a first version here. Now, I want to create a class for this. So under targets here, as Brian mentioned, target is a synonym for a class. We've typically used target to identify creating the class and the discovery that goes along with it, but in this case, we just want to create the class. This is where we could specify additional properties. I'm not going to do that. The properties that are already there are sufficient. Here's our base class. Now what we want to find is the System Network Management node. And these are, fortunately, alphabetical. So we just have to make sure I don't drag too far down. N-O-D-E, there it is. Because of the definition of node, we can't change whether it's abstract, hosted, or singleton, so we don't have anything else to do there. We give it a name, so it's based on the management pack name and the base class, which is node. I'm actually going to change that. Let me just copy and paste here. And quick trip to get the display name in there correctly. And there's all the information, and as soon as I click finish, we'll create that class. So here's our class. We can see some properties here. There are things that could or could not be changed here, names, the qualifiers, that sort of stuff. We can look at the XML values for that. Of course, with a simple class like this, there isn't much to see. I'm going to save the MP right now. It shows us what's actually changed as a summary, and we'll see over here in a second that we have a second version stored in the store, which should be version 1.1. There we go. We can do a lot of things here. I'm not going to get into them specifically, but we can compare them to other versions. We can document them. We can look at summaries, audit history. There's a lot of things we can do. But right now, I don't think we need to do any of those. The next thing we want to do is add a discovery for this class. Now, as I mentioned, MP Studio and MP Author don't have any specific support for SNMP. So we're going to add this by just pasting in some code I already have. So I'm going to edit the XML here. Now, we're going to add a module type, and these is, again, something that Brian was mentioning earlier. Module types come into this management pack after entity types here. So I simply have to come over to a window you can't see yet and copy. And I'll just come back here and paste. Now, I'm not going to describe the module type in any great detail. Let's just say I've put in a fairly generic module type that allows me to find these sorts of node-derived objects. Okay, we pass the information into them, and I'll discuss that a little bit more in more detail. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the actual discovery itself. So again, I go over and I copy it, and I need to paste that in after the type definitions right here before the language packs. So paste that in, and we will discuss this in a second, but right now I'm just going to save this information. One of the features of MP Studio and MP Author is that we allow you to run the verifier and the best practices analyzer. I'm just going to quickly do that. Verify warns about class definitions in unsealed management packs. We've just created this. It's certainly not sealed, and we do have a class definition in it. That's a fairly normal warning. We can also run the best practices analyzer on it, and it's going to give us a little bit of additional things. We'll touch on a couple of them right now, but we're not going to do all of them. So in a couple of seconds, it'll come up here, and I like to just tell it not to show me the stuff that's passed, so I only see the warnings. So here's the first thing it's mentioning, that the management pack elements should have knowledge articles, and our discovery doesn't have a knowledge article. We'll create one in a second. And down at the bottom here, it also points out that we didn't create display names for certain elements for our discovery, our data source, and things like that. And we have a very helpful utility in MP Studio and MP Author to do that. So let's just do a couple of those quickly. Let's check for missing display names, and we'll see that our discovery has a missing display name, our discovery data source, and certain of the overridable properties in the data source do. So I'm just going to give the discovery a name, and we're just going to call it MP University Device Discovery. We could give it a description, which is description. Yeah, like I should try to type. Put that in, and it's, of course, now that it has a display name, it removes it from the list. I'm just going to do the second one here. This is the device discovery data source. And again, we could put in a description. I'm not going to bother here. And it keeps removing these, and we can easily fill in the rest of them. I'm not going to bother with that. The other thing it mentioned is that we didn't have knowledge for this discovery. So we can select the discovery here. I'm just going to say create and edit knowledge. Bring up a very handy thing that allows us to put it in. I'm just going to create some very dummy knowledge here, but basically this discovery creates classes for the Sonic Wall TZ215 device. Click OK. I'll just quickly run Best Practices Analyzer again, and it'll show you that one of the things that didn't have knowledge is now taken care of, and two of the things that didn't have display names are taken care of, and this is how you can refine these. So we don't have a management pack for the demo, we don't have for this data source, we don't have the knowledge there. Oh, I've left off a description, and I guess it wants that, but I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to save that again. At this point, we know that we actually have a management pack that's in pretty good shape. What we have in particular is our class and our discovery definition. So I can come up here and I'm going to right-click and I can click Deploy. And this gives us the name of the management server we want to use and the credentials we want to use to connect to it. Now, again, this has already been, the real version's already been deployed, so I'm not going to click the add, but if we did click that in the background, it would simply deploy this. Well, actually, if we do this, let me show, because there's one more step it'll do. Cross-domain, don't worry about that message. It goes out to the management server, finds out what management packs are already there, show us if there was existing versions, if there were earlier and later versions of reference management packs, if there were reference management packs which also needed to be deployed. And it will do those and it'll deploy everything you need in the proper order. At this point, I'm just going to hit cancel because we don't actually want to deploy this. I'm going to come back to my management server here and come back here. I want to come up to monitoring and I want to look at the discovered inventory. In particular, I'm now looking for this class, this MP University Sonic Wall class, and we've actually found one. The properties you'll recognize are pretty much the same properties that we already saw because I didn't add any new properties, but we do now have a proper class for this, and this is unique class. It's not the node class, this is derived from node, and so this only applies to the Sonic Wall. At this point, we've got everything we need. We can create our monitor. So I'm going to come back to authoring here. I can go to monitors and right-click and create a monitor. As you probably heard from Brian's thing, unit monitors are what we use when we actually want to sample stuff. So we create the unit monitor. It asks us what type. Well, obviously we're looking for SNMP. Probe versus trap. Probe means we go out and ask for value. Trap means the SNMP device tells us when something changes. We're going to probe, and we're just going to do this simple SNMP probe monitor. I am going to tell it we're going to put it into the MP University pack, but in reality I'm not going to save it at the end. We're going to give it a name, and again, I have lots of stuff to copy and paste in here. This is a display name, and it will give it a unique name. We can give it a description, which I will do here. We have the target we need to specify here. Now, I'm going to select, this is a list of targets, so there's common targets. I'm going to ask for all, and then I'm going to filter, so I only find my Sonic Wall. And that's our Sonic Wall class that we added, created by Michael Sargent. I'm going to say, okay, so that's the target that we're looking for. And as our parent monitor, I'm actually going to go for performance here because it's memory usage, and my presumption is that if we use too much memory, performance falls off. Now, this monitor is going to go out and probe the device and ask for values. And then there's going to be expressions which say whether those values are good or bad, healthy, unhealthy. Now, the first thing we have here is a probe where we can ask for one or more object identifiers. And in this case, I'm just going to copy and paste in here the object identifier that we were looking at earlier, and that's that memory usage identifier. I don't know if you remember, but it ended with the 1, 4, and .0 means the value rather than, it has a bit of special meaning, but let's just say that's the value we want here. We could get additional values. I don't need them here, so I'm not going to use them. Now we have an expression. So we'll have the value. What does it mean? Now, I'm going to put in some cut and paste here. So the parameter name, a bit magic. Let's see if I can drag this over so you can see the whole thing here. And let's go to this. There's actually a bit more to that. SNMP varbind. So the values that come back are in a certain hierarchical structure. So in the group of, no, that didn't work the way I want. In the group of data that comes back, there are the variable binds. And then for the first bind, or the only bind in our case, we're looking for the value. And if you recall earlier, that was a value of 44. So what we're looking for here is less than or equal to 40. So if we're using less than 40% of the memory, that's a good thing. Our second SNMP probe is very similar. We're going to be looking actually at the same probe value. The expression is almost identical, but in this case, because we're looking for less than or equal before, we're going to look for greater than. So let's just insert our expression. And you might have noticed that the choices there allow you to make very complicated expressions in terms of ands and ors and equals, not equals, and wildcard matches and things like that. We're just concerned with greater than in this case, and we're actually going to use the same value, 40. Now, when the first probe was raised, that was the less than case, and that's actually healthy. So I'm going to change this to be the healthy case, and I'm going to change the second one where it is greater than 40 to a warning case. I could have defined the backwards where I wouldn't have had to change this, but it's a good example. And now we want to generate an alert. So I turn this on. We want to generate the alert when the monitor is in a warning health state, which we saw from the previous one. We automatically want to resolve the alert when the monitor returns to the health state. This is a two-state monitor, so it will tell us when things are healthy again. Gives us the default alert name. I'm just going to tag the word alert on the end there. I'm going to leave priority and severity alone. And then we have the alert description. This is what will show up in the console when an alert is raised. So I'm just going to copy in what I'm not going to copy it, I'll just type this in. So I'm going to say, if I actually am in the right window, device. Now we need the name of the device. Unfortunately, that's part of the target. So we can go down here and ask for the target display name here. And it fills in these $$ variables and basically says go up to the property of the entity, which is the root of everything, and get the display name. And it'll substitute that in. Now the rest of the message is just saying using too much memory, current value is. Now we'd like to know what the current value is so we can tell people. And so in this case, under data, we can look at those variables that came back. And we don't want the OID or the syntax, we actually want the value here. It puts in a value and a placeholder that will let us put in whatever value we want, whichever value we want here. But we only have one variable, so I'm taking out the index, and we'll just use that. And we'll make it a little prettier by putting a % on the end of it. At this point, we could create that new monitor. Now, as I've mentioned, we've already done this, and because it would take several minutes to actually get registered, process the monitor and raise the alert, and we only have a limited amount of time, I'm going to cancel out of this, and we'll show you the result. And the result is if we come back to the monitoring page and look at active alerts, here's our alert. It's for the SonicWall TZ215. You'll see under the alert description here, the SonicWall TZ15 is using too much memory. Current usage is 44. This one I hadn't put a pretty % on the end of it. At this point, it's an alert like any other. You can close it, set the alert resolution state. You can look at the health reporter. All those things are there. There's no difference at this point. And we can see, I'm not sure why my state, although you need to go here. We can see exactly when my state change happened and stuff like that. The values here. And it even gives the value. There's our object identifier and the value. So that's where we want to go with that. And I've got exactly one other thing I want to do here. I want to come back to MP Studio. I'm going to expand the folder for the lab. We've registered that lab folder in here. We've changed the MP. So I want to go out here. Here's our MP, and I want to save that back here. And I'm just going to put it on my root of my C, which is a very poor place to put it. And I already have a copy, so it's probably going to tell me. Oh, it didn't tell me. I thought it might tell me that it already exists. And if we come here to the MP University folder, which is the real one, I'm going to check that value in. I'm going to check it in from the file. I guess, actually, I'm going to go off script here for a second. I'm going to say I'm going to check it in from the lab itself. It tells me that the version we're adding does not have the same, does not have the correct version number. The Operations Manager console doesn't always increment the version number. MP Studio and MP Author already does, so it gives us a little warning. And so I'm going to import that. It shows the differences. I'm just going to hit save here, and there's our latest version. And close that version, open this version here very quickly. And for instance, here's our monitor. And we can do things with it like change the name. So I'll come over here, and I'll just say MP University. Oh, got to get the dots in there. University. Sonic wall.monitor. I hope you'd give it a better name. We can look at the XML. We can do all those things. Georgia, how am I doing for time? Heather?
We're going to let you keep going. You're doing a great job. And okay. What we think might happen is, because Jonathan's still having technical difficulties, we are going to tape his session and send that out separately to the group, but you can keep going. And then once you're finished, we'll do the Q&A if attendees are not already entering questions. And then we'll give you maybe an extra 10 minutes for lunch.
Okay. So I mentioned I would look at the unit monitor that we've created here. Sorry, this was the unit monitor that was created by the Ops Manager console. That's not the one I was actually talking about, but you can look at this. You can see the names, what it's targeted at. You know, it's targeted at the sonic wall and its performance state, the type of the monitor. Here's the definition of the alert and the properties that we substituted into it, the various operational states, and the configuration. So, you know, we've got it separated into sort of two groups, first and second, where we say the IP and the version and the OID of the variable we're looking for and the expression. You will recognize that, and less than or equal to 40. And then the second, it does the same thing, but it's looking for greater than 40. The one I was particularly wanting to describe was the discovery. So if we look at the XML for that, it's actually much simpler. We have our name, we're targeting the network node. The discovery type is the class that we had already mentioned. The type ID was the first module type I had very quickly put in. I really don't want to get into that one in too much detail. But we pass certain parameters through to that module. This is how often we're going to do the discovery, once a day. That's 86,400 seconds for those of you who have never done the arithmetic. We pass in a couple properties like the display name, which is taken from the node, and the model number, again, taken from the node. And we tell it what object ID we're looking for. And if you recall, that was the object ID that showed up in the sys object ID when we looked at it in the OAView browser, and it also showed up in the properties. This particular module has a way of filtering by name, and so I specified the generic name here, but you could actually filter it out. And I also passed the class ID through, which seems a little redundant because it's already specified up here, but it's necessary. And this, by passing this through, means this data source can actually be relatively generic, a little more generic than it otherwise would be. I think Brian's going to get into some details on creating custom data sources and custom module types later today. Frankly, I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. And I think that pretty much covers everything. I'll do one more save because we changed some names. I believe that's all I wanted to talk about here, so we can start looking at some of the questions. Let's try to get this list here. Georgia, Heather, did you want to ask the question?
Hi, it's Georgia. I can read the questions out loud to you there.
Okay.
Great job, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping in. All right, we've got quite a few questions actually, which is great. We'll get to them now. All right, let's start from the top. So Ross asks, would it be worth mentioning the firewall rules that need to be enabled for network discovery? It took me a long time before finding them.
Yes, it would be worth mentioning them. I'd actually forgot about having to do all of that myself. I was trying to discover a router, and I did actually have to go out and, Lord help me, Google it to try and find it. Found a slightly out-of-date version which told me about the firewall rules I had to set. And I've gone through this with other devices. It can be a pain. And one of the reasons I really strongly suggest you use something like OAView is because if you can't see what you need in OAView, Ops Manager certainly can't see it. And in this case, I'm actually in my remote office, across a VPN into our main office where the router is here, where the router is, not here. Ops Manager is also in our main Manatech office. And so the fact that I can actually talk to it, see all the information I need here, means I'm pretty sure that Ops Manager will. If I couldn't do that using something as simple as OAView, there's no way Ops Manager will ever be able to find it. And yes, firewall rules do come into play there. Just one thing you should be aware of, this is the event viewer. Under Application and Service Logs, Operations Manager has its own section, and it will log some information here that may help you resolve some of those problems, or at least tell you that it can't communicate. That's when I was trying to set the previous one up like this, I spent a lot of time in there before I got that working. And yeah, unfortunately, it's just not trivial. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Hope that answered your question, Ross. Next question from Alexi. Is there any opportunity to use NetFlow with network monitoring? That's his first question.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I can only give you honest answers, I'm afraid.
That's fine. That's fine. Let me go to the second question then. Is there an opportunity to create network map better than network vicinity dashboard?
I would guess there is, but I don't have any knowledge on that myself. That might be something that Freddie briefly discusses this afternoon in his reporting session. I don't think it is. So I don't know the answer to that. I suspect there's a way to do it, but I can't give you anything useful on that, I'm afraid.
No problem. Alexi, we'll do some research on that and get back to you with the FAQs we'll have on our website shortly. Thank you for the questions. Okay, Christian asks, how do I know which references I need to build the MP I want?
It's a great question. The three I mentioned actually came from an article which I want to, I'll see if we can get this to you. Let me just click this. A lovely set of articles here. I should remember who actually created this. It's a 5-part article on creating SNMP monitoring management packs for System Center 2012 Operations Manager. And in particular, there's a list of the management packs that were needed to be referenced, the nodes, logical devices, and that sort of stuff. Danielle, but I'm not actually sure who this is. Should have looked at that. We'll get this link in some documentation. A couple of files I wanted to actually send out. We'll try to get them in with the slide deck so you have a reference to this. This is a particularly good set of articles, but there are a number of them on the web. Those should cover everything you need for SNMP. If you're talking about in terms of just in general, I don't know. The documentation on the TechNet or MSDN sites will often tell you what the module, MP the module type is in. Sometimes you just have to sniff around. Hopefully that answers.
Can't hear you, Mike. Sorry, buddy.
You need to speak up a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was trailing off as my answer got weaker and weaker. So, in general, you have to do a bit of research. There's a limited set. The ones for SNMP, we can tell you which ones you probably need there. But in general, I think you're going to find Google your friend.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Peter has a question. Can you run a discovery off a consolidated database instead of registry keys?
I don't think that has anything to do with SNMP.
All right. I'm trying here too. Okay, we'll get that answered, Peter, for you nonetheless. Okay, let's go with Tom. Let's see if this is appropriate. SCOM has a list of certified devices. Are there any plans to update or increase the number of devices?
I can't speak for the operations manager group. I can only speak for Silect.
All right.
One would presume that over the years those numbers will increase, but I have no direct knowledge of that.
Okay, I'm going to skip the SCOM questions then. Let's go to this. I think this is appropriate. Can we monitor any Windows server as an SNMP device? If yes, what is the procedure?
I think the answer is yes. SNMP support is built into Windows Server. There's a service you can start. You may need to do something in. I haven't done this directly. I did it years ago on a Windows 7 box, so I can only give you rough ideas. I think you need to enable it in the add remove programs. You turn on the SNMP server for it. There's some configuration which may be in the service manager or something like that. I'm not certain there. Windows does, in fact, put out an awful lot of data in SNMP if you want it. So you certainly can do it. And once you've done that, the same techniques I've shown can be used. I would suggest, though, that if possible, using registry discovery and things like that is probably faster, but obviously you're looking for some additional information that may only be available over SNMP or perhaps is more convenient over SNMP. But yes, you definitely can do it.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Next question. How can you add in redundancy in receiving traps since only one management server will process traps for any given device?
Again, unfortunately, I have no idea. I actually have not used traps yet.
Okay. That's funny. We appreciate your honesty here. Go to the next question. When using the OAView product to find the objects to discover, you are referencing an MIB file that is obtained from each vendor for their device. Are you referencing?
Yes.
Okay.
In particular, and I'm not sure I can find it right now, there's this load MIB button up here, and here I've loaded in these 4 MIBs that I got from that are for SonicWall. I got them off of the OAView site. It does tell you, how many objects are there, and I'm not sure if it'll actually show me the contents or anything like that. Oh, browse module. Oh, that it just goes out and actually looks for the values. But yes, highly recommended. Go get the MIB files for your specific device, load them in. It makes life so much easier. If nothing else, it gives you this sort of information. Let me go to the right place here. Where'd it go? Private. Enterprises, SonicWall. Let's click on that. We're not getting the data here. I'm in the wrong place somewhere, aren't I? But it gives you the information about, model. It's not seems to be showing up here. I'm somewhere else. I'm not where I expect to be. But it'll give you things like the description and what the data type is. So very highly recommended. Hunt down and use the MIBs.
Great. Thank you. Next question. Got a lot of questions for you here. Will the module code be available for download? That's the code that you copied and pasted into the XML file.
Yes, I will get that to Georgia with the slides, and we'll try and put a package together to get that out to everybody.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Thank you. We've got a SCOM question here I'm skipping over. Ronald asks, how do you add SNMP traps to your demo MP?
Yeah, unfortunately, like I mentioned, I have not played with the traps yet, so I'm afraid I can't answer that question.
Sorry, that I should have been paying more attention there.
No, it's actually, there's exactly two ways to do it. There's the probe and the trap, and I've really only played with the probe so far. I do know that in looking at this, there were some good articles on using traps on the web. I'm afraid you just have to search.
Okay, thank you. If this one is appropriate, was there a separate outgoing firewall rule for ICMP and SNMP?
There are.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say.
Okay, that was a yes or no type question. Fair enough.
The next question is, what is it, right?
No, actually it wasn't. So it was just a question. I guess it would be a yes or no. So thank you.
Yeah, SNMP uses typically UDP over port 161. ICOMP is UDP. I can't remember.
Whoever's speaking, you're very faint. You need to speak up.
Yes, there are definitely different rules because they use different port numbers.
Okay, great. That was you, Mike?
That was me.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Next question. How would you handle SNMP tables?
I can't answer that one either. I have not got into that yet. Basically, the tables, and I'll just try and show what that looks like here, interfaces, for instance. I need the browser. Somehow I'm not getting what I used to get here. Ugh. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing. So, for instance, in interfaces we have, the first thing is the number. IF number is the number of interfaces. And I don't know why it's no longer giving me what I'm looking for here. I haven't used this that much. But then underneath that is a table. And so this is the interface table with a bunch of entries. And each entry has an index. So the IF number would be 0 through n. And the indexes, I think, are 1 through n. You remember I mentioned that a particular OID ended with a 0? That means I'm not looking for an indexed value. I really wish this was showing stuff. I'm not sure what I've done here. Detail? No. Anyways, yeah, I mean, there is an index, and you can specify that. What I have seen is the OID specified with a OID value dot and then a dollar type parameter specifying the index number. There's a open source product called XSNMP out there, which Pete Zerger wrote, and it handles a lot of these things. So that might be a good place to look. Unfortunately, I can't give you much more than that.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Let's do a couple more. It's quite a few from your session. That's good news. Everyone's interested. That's fantastic. Can you provide any information related to OAView licensing?
No, you have to talk to the OAView people themselves. I do know that you can download a free version, which I think for 7 days gives you unrestricted access, and then they turn some features off. I was mostly interested in the MIB browser. The other one I mentioned by, what's the name there? Sorry. iReasoning. That one is free all the time. But as those are third-party products, I really can't say anything about their licensing.
Okay, very good. I think we'll stop there. And again, as mentioned, all of these questions will be responded to. You've got a lot of great answers from our presenters today, but some of them do need to be researched. So appreciate the questions and your patience. We are finished a little early, so why don't we take a lunch break? And the plan was 12 to 12:45 Eastern. Let's come back 5 minutes early then, since we're giving you, or stopping 5 minutes earlier. So 12:40 Eastern time is when
Georgia, I've just been looking at the questions here. The question about monitoring Windows with SNMP,
Yes.
about 4 or 5 people have answered. The answer is no, that Windows itself, I guess Ops Manager will filter out anything coming from Windows. That's probably a default state, and it might be able to be disabled because I believe I have seen the filter for that you may be able to disable it, but I guess in general the answer is no. So I was mistaken. It looks like you could do it prior to SCOM 2012. I think I had done that with 2007 some time ago. So apparently you can't anymore.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I see people are jumping in there and helping each other.
Yeah, thanks to everybody there.
That's fantastic. Appreciate it. Okay, why don't we take the break and we'll resume with Brian Renigan from Microsoft at 12:40 for his presentation on MP authoring tools. Thank you.
Georgia, if you don't mind, I'll just jump in and leave one note. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for the awesome questions during Mike's session, and Mike, you did an awesome job. Appreciate that. A lot of these questions just require a little bit of research, and we're happy to help with those things as well. You know, so I've put my email address out there, and I tend to, you know, sort of filter what goes on into dev and whatnot. So happy to help with those. Whether it's if it's a quick answer, we'll, you know, get that back to you. But sometimes it may require a little more work, and so we do offer services to help with those things. Or, you know, we've got some recent customers that we've built SNMP management packs for. So either way, we're happy to help. If we weren't able to answer the questions today, we can take it offline and get into a little more of interactive session and help you. Thank you.
Sure, Randy, that's a great point. And as George has said, we are going to post all of the questions with a backup answer as a link after the presentation's completed. So I think you folks are in good hands with the companies that are on board here to get you some quick answers, just not always able to answer them on the spot. Nice job, Brian. Thanks very much again for stepping in early. And everybody enjoy your lunch. We look forward to the afternoon sessions.
Lunch or dinner or maybe breakfast in some
yeah,
part of the world?
Sure enough.
Okay.
Well, enjoy your meal.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.